Hi everybody, we are going to do some grammar now, and we're going to be exploring the use of tenses in our writing. This is a very common problem that people have, that we sort of change tense within our writing, and we're going to be looking at identifying tenses, and hopefully that can help us to spot some errors that we make with our tenses and hopefully keep consistent tenses. So let's have a quick recap. A verb is a word or phrase that describes an action, condition, or experience. Most commonly, though, it is the action. You may have been taught them as doing words, they're action words, or being words. So the rabbit is jumping in the field. The boy likes roller coasters. The caterpillar became a butterfly. When you are writing, the verbs you use can show if something has happened already, is happening, or will happen in the future. Really, really important, and it's one of those things that's not explicit. Like, we don't tell our readers, but they pick up these little clues. So staying in a consistent tense can make sure our writing is cohesive, so it makes sense. So, of course, we've learned some of the more complicated tenses, but you can find tenses three basic categories. We've got past, present, and future, and we've covered a bit of that in things like past progressive and past continuous, but we're not going to delve quite into that today. So let's look more generally at past tense. Past tenses are used to describe things that have already happened. It happened in the past. So, for example, I walked to the shop. Walked. We discussed earlier in the week or last week those ED sentences. So the three ED sentences, remember, they're past tense. I walked to the shop. We listened to the radio. I read an interesting book. What's really interesting about this verb is read and read are spelled the same, but it depends on the context of the sentence. And they finished their homework. I have finished in there. Past tense verbs often end in ed, but not always. For example, read and ran. So that's just a brief overview of past tense. Present tense, so that's what's happening now. Present tense sentences are used when something is happening now or when something is happening regularly. So I am walking to the shop. We are listening to music. I am reading an interesting book. They are finishing their homework. Can you see the differences between the past tense and the present tense? All those sentences are along similar lines. And finally, the future tense. It tells us what hasn't happened yet but might happen. So I will walk to the shop. We will listen to music. I will read an interesting book. They will finish their homework. Now, there are some little tense, like sub-tenses within those, but they're the three basic categories. Now, what I want you to do is just use this picture, write some present tense sentences about this picture. Pause the video and write them down. Let's have a look. This is something you could have wrote. I mean, there is a multitude that you could have written, but here are just some examples. The child is throwing the ball in the air. They are using the swings. The child is playing with the kite. The two children are kicking a ball back and forth. The three children are playing with a skipping rope. Very standard sentences, but they are all in present tense. Some past tense sentences. The child threw a ball in the air. They used the swings. The child played with the kite. Two children kicked a ball back and forth. The three children played with a skipping rope. Can you think of any more? Pause that. Okay, and as you can probably guess, I'm going to show you some examples of present tense sentences. The child will throw a ball into the air. They will use the swings. The child will play with a kite. Two children will kick a ball back and forth. And the three children will play with the skipping rope. So can you write some present tense sentences? Pause the video. Okay, so now onto our main task. So for one chili, what I want you to do is I want you to identify the tenses in the sentence below. So just write the sentence out and then tell me, is it present, past, or future? For our 2 chili challenge, what I want you to do is to identify the tenses. So I want you to write it out, identify the tense, and then find an alternative tense. So for example, if you think the first one is written in past tense, you would write it out, put past tense, then maybe underneath it, you would write it in future tense. And I want you to do that for all of them. So there's an alternative tense for a different tense. And finally, for our 3 chili challenge, read this paragraph below. And what I want you to do is to convert this into past tense. Because at the minute, it's written in present tense. Convert this, don't change the meanings. I want you to keep the same structure, and I don't want you to make anything up. I want you to convert what's actually there into past tense. So Charlie usually wakes up at 6 a.m. on a school day. Convert that into past tense. And then if you finish that and you want an extension, you could write your own sentences in future tense. Yeah, in school we don't practice future tense as much. We spend a lot of time in past tense. We play around with a bit of present, but we rarely talk about the future. But here's a good time to practice right now, future tense. Have fun.